I can look real quick. Yeah.
Hi, folks. We're about to start the discussion. If you could please take your seats. Thank you. Ambassador Wallace, you'll just be. We have you starting at the podium. Oh, that's one from the fellows.
Sorry, I'm
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. And it's a real pleasure to open this conversation today. On the last day of High Level Week, I hope everybody's already seeing a light at the end of this particular tunnel and looking forward to reflecting on everything that's happened this week and also getting a rest because it has been a very intense week. But welcome to so many partners here in the room in New York and to those of us joining online. It's great to see you. I want to thank the governments of Jamaica, the government of Germany, Coalition for the UN We Need, and all the partners who are co-hosting this conversation with us today and who are part of it. You know, it's a powerful thing to gather on the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. And I hope you had the opportunity to see the commemoration in the General Assembly on Monday at 9 o'clock. If you didn't, I commend it to you to watch afterwards, particularly the remarks from those leaders from the UN's founding generation who reflected on that time and gave unsparing testimony to what is at stake. It really is well worth seeing. You know, we've all been in many rooms this week, and some of them have had great energy and made important strides on common goals and commitments. I think the climate summit, I just want to give a shout out, was particularly notable in being able to do that. I don't know about you, but I think for me, at least this week has also had a palpable sense that the UN's future is on the line. Some of that is about finances, and we all know that story. I think more of it is about politics and about the underlying values and principles that are meant to govern the affairs of states and peoples, that are what the UN Charter is all about at the end of the day. That promise to prevent the scourge of war, the pledge to promote human dignity and equal rights, the commitment to energize coordinated effort around promoting better standards of life for all. Now, we all know that those commitments over 80 years have often been more honored in the breach than the observance. But we are now facing, I think, a collective test about what we're prepared to do to strategize, to organize, and to mobilize around those core principles and insist that that change. Now, that's where this conversation becomes extremely important, because we're here to talk about implementation of the Pact for the Future, along with the Declaration on Future Generations, the Global Digital Compact. Together, those agreements were a real political breakthrough last year. Many of you were very involved in this, and you all know how difficult it was to achieve, and you all had a lot to do with adding positive political pressure to make it possible. You know, some of the steps we've seen since last September are really encouraging. The successful launch of the Independent International Scientific Panel on AI and the Global Dialogue on AI, the formation of a group of friends on future generations, and the coalitions that have come together to drive implementation across themes. But we've also seen the challenges, the steepest of which is the overarching question about the UN's very future. So today I would encourage our conversation to keep two dimensions in mind. You know, one is about Pact implementation and all of the things we need to do to keep it on track, including the coalitions you're a part of, but also ways that Pact implementation can inform a deeper dialogue and stimulate new ideas about the future purpose and renewal of the UN. I think nothing less is at stake. Now, at the UN Foundation, we're committed to working on this challenge, which will be our singular focus over the coming months. And we're really pleased to be able to be in partnership with all of you to work not just on Pact implementation and turning that vision into real outcomes, but also to thinking about this broader task of renewal of the United Nations and renewing, in particular, broader trust in the multilateral system and its relevance for real people in real places. So I'm really delighted to kick off this conversation today, eager to learn from and hear from all of you. And thank you for being part of not just this conversation, but everything that you do to help our multilateral system deliver in ways that are meaningful. So I want to thank Adam Lupel also for being our fearless moderator of this session, Adam of the Coalition for the UN We Need. And Adam, it's my distinct pleasure to turn the floor now over to you.
Fearless moderator. Should I be afraid? This seems like a nice, it seems like a nice group. And actually, yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's really always fun to be able to cooperate with Elizabeth, and I go way back. So first of all, I just want to say congratulations, you're here. It's a breakfast Friday morning of high level week. It's you made it. So congratulations. It's not for the faint of heart as we get to this end of the week. At this point, people kind of start dropping like flies. Immune systems fail. Feet are sore. Backs are starting to weaken out. The will weakens of some, but you guys represent the strong. The truly determined. So really, thank you. That energy is we all need that. What a difference a year makes. Been having a lot of conversations about how different this year feels in many respects. The crisis is really palpable. This whole community was absorbed with the action days and the coming together to adopt the Pact of the Future and its critical annexes, including the 56 actions charting the path to a revitalized multilateral system and a better future for all just 1 year ago. And today, the implementation of the Pact remains urgent, but some do seem to want to turn the page on all of that in the face of budgetary challenges and the ongoing divisions. But in the course of this week, and I was just speaking about this with Temba, actually, I think it's also increasingly aware, I'm increasingly aware, we're all increasingly aware that there are, in some ways, a broadening recognition of the importance of the Pact, and recognizing that there are so many core elements in it that can help to inspire that broader conversation that we are having, that Elizabeth asks us to have about the deeper purposes of the United Nations as we work to revitalize it. So I think that this work is central to that endeavor. But we must remind member states and others of that shared ambition, hold them accountable, and collectively, all of us, shed light on that path ahead. It's just going to be a strategic endeavor. And I think we have a pretty good group here assembled to help us do that. We have some very specific objectives that have been laid out. First, take stock of the progress that has been made over the year, and there has been progress. Examine those challenges to operationalizing these commitments. Showcase civil society perspectives. We've got, C4UN, we're a civil society platform. We've got civil society in the room, and I, for one, have been really loving the energy in that community, our community this week. But also, we want to highlight leadership from member states. There are member state leaders that we depend upon, and we want to highlight that. And then let's chart the priorities for the next phase of action to ensure the Pact's commitments deliver meaningful outcomes. It's quite a list of tasks and priorities that you've all signed up to. This is a collective endeavor. But first, we've got some setting the scene, some extraordinary people here that I'm really grateful to have that are going to give us some opening remarks. We will first hear from His Excellency Ambassador Brian Wallace, Permanent Representative of Jamaica to the United Nations, followed by Themba Kalua, Executive Office of the SG and Director of Pact Implementation, the man of the hour. And then online we have Lucia Velasco, who's a Senior Advisor on AI Policy, sticking with brand by being online. So wonderful. Ambassador, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks to the team. Themba, it's always great to be sitting next to you. So many familiar faces. It's refreshing to see that you are continuing, that you have the stamina to stay with this subject. But it does, as Adam said, it does produce its own energy. And we have some partners who are extraordinary at keeping the subject matter front of mind. Not only because it's sexy, but because it's so necessary, especially in the midst of the kind of crisis that we are in now, that Adam alluded to. And this is what gives me, that keeps me in a constant state of optimism and hope. Because we do have a pathway, we do have a framework that can take us through this crisis and land us in a better place. And thankfully, we had established and agreed this framework before the full brunt of the crisis hit. So we have something to, I'm not going to call it a crutch, but we have a foundation to stand firm on as we meet the challenges that we now face. And I will be the first one to say that I am not going to accept any intrusion of thought that suggests that the system will fail as a result of the crisis that we're in now. Simply because it cannot. The planet cannot operate, it cannot survive without a multilateral system that delivers for everyone. No matter what anybody says, the era of isolationism is over. Communication, ease of communication alone means that you cannot keep things closed within borders. And if things are moving from border through borders to others, that defines a necessity for a functioning multilateral system. So the notion that it's doom and gloom and that there is, we're in an existential crisis, I reject that notion. My approach to this is, here's another challenge that we face. And I come from a developing country that's in a hurricane belt. So we are used, challenges for us are just Tuesday. And if we were to adopt a mindset that said, for every challenge, it's the end of the day, we would never get beyond them. And so the only part of the Jamaican experience that I will share with you through this is that we have to be resilient and maintain an optimism so that we can look for the pathways that take us beyond the crisis. And that aligns with our thinking about future generations. Because if you keep in your mind that what you're doing has an impact, not just for you, and you're not just doing it for you, but you're doing it to preserve the rights and aspirations of those who will come long after you. It requires you to maintain that optimism. And it requires you to look deeper, to straighten your spine, and to be more thoughtful about what we are doing now to meet the challenges of today. Are we just doing a patchwork so that we survive it and stay in a state of perpetual flux, or are we going to fundamentally fix it? So we have this foundation of the Pact for the Future and its annexes, including the Declaration on Future Generations. We have that embedded in a multilateral framework that we are able to use to deliver some results. And we have an able director of that office within the Secretariat who can help us to navigate and to embed. So we have a willing partner with the UN system. We have immense energy and capacity from civil society. There's a handbook at the back of the room from SWAF that maps what has been happening over the past year alone. And you know, a lot of it is not happening in the GA hall. A lot of it is happening in capitals, in parliaments, in cabinets, on the ground, in local communities, in UN country offices, where we're already beginning to translate this kind of energy and thinking into local programs, to where it reaches the community. So the group of friends that we're going to launch once this mess of high level week is over will continue to drive the momentum within the member state community and maintain those links and partnerships with civil society so that we can bring the conversation constantly to be front of mind as we're looking through the reform. We have this unfortunate for me, but lucky for the Futures coalition, that I will also be participating in a meaningful way in the reform process, leading the intergovernmental working group on mandate implementation. So we have an opportunity to continue to infuse this thinking, and you have my commitment to continue to do so. I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation. I'm going to ask you to forgive me if I am not able to stay for all of this. You may not believe it from seeing me sitting here this morning, but my Prime Minister is delivering our national statement in the GA later on today, so I really shouldn't even be here. So, but thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, even just for that. Thank you so much for being here. I know there might be some cost, and it just demonstrates your commitment. So really, really grateful for that, and thank you for your remarks. And yeah, I think we're all seeing we do have a foundation in the Pact, and one that can provide us a path to be optimistic and resilient as we move forward. So thank you so very much for that. Now, I'm going to turn to Themba Kalua for the EOSG. Themba, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. I may start with a breach of protocol, but I wanted to ask Elizabeth if she can come and sit next to us here. And I'll tell you the reason why. I spent, first of all, she's our host. They are hosting us here. I spent 10 years working for UN Women. And at some point, I was the country representative of Papua New Guinea. When I got there, we had a parliament of 111 parliamentarians, and there was no single woman. And so we had to be very deliberate whenever we were going to meetings to ask that, whenever we are in front, at least, we have to have somebody in front. It has to be balanced. And this is also a recognition of the incredible women that are part of the implementation of Pact for the Future. Just in my team at the moment, I'm the only man. The rest are ladies, and I've got Daniela and Clara here. But I want to begin by thanking the partners that have brought us together this morning. You can see the slide at the back. All of them are mentioned. I want to thank Elizabeth and the UN Foundation team for hosting us here. But I also want to thank all of you for being here, because I know that during High Level Week, there's a lot of competition amongst different events. So thank you for choosing to be here. Many of you have been partners since the early days of this journey, and your energy, ideas, leadership have shaped the Pact for the Future and given it life, whether it's here in New York or in the various regions through your various networks and the important work that you are doing. But I also want to recognize Jamaica and Ambassador Wallace in particular. He not only provided incredible leadership that helped birth the Declaration on Future Generations together with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but he has continued with that commitment and leadership now that we're in this critical phase of implementation. And, if the Prime Minister, his Prime Minister is speaking today, and he's here, If that's not commitment, then I don't know what is. So I think let's give a big hand to Ambassador Wallace for the Now, the pact was born in a time of deep geopolitical division. And sadly, those divisions have only grown since the pact adoption. We are also seeing so many priorities and so many issues that are demanding our attention. The UN, as some of the previous speakers have mentioned, the UN and many of the civil society partners are experiencing serious budget constraints. Now, all these issues on one hand make the pact implementation very challenging, but at the same time, as Ambassador Wallace said, it also makes it more urgent and necessary. The challenges that we are facing now, the pact provides the necessary tools for us to navigate those challenges. So it's more urgent now to ensure that we implement. And encouragingly, despite these complexities, we're seeing that member states, including those that are represented here, are showing incredible commitment. And we are seeing that many stakeholders, including civil society, are ready to contribute. So I thought I could focus on where we 1 year on since the adoption and in terms of the implementation, and share a few reflections on where we are going. Since the adoption of the pact, from our side, implementation has been the real test. And we have to be mindful that 80% of the pact's actions rest with member states. So either that's through national implementation or through intergovernmental processes. The UN has been mobilized to support these efforts while also ensuring that we are delivering on the actions that were mandated to us by the pact. As we have shared before, the Secretary General chairs a steering committee, and under that steering committee, there are 6 working groups focusing on SDG delivery, peace and security, digital cooperation, youth engagement, global governance, and financial architecture reform. This mechanism is an oversight mechanism with the direct involvement of the Secretary General himself, but it's also an accountability mechanism, because when we sit in the steering committee, principles that from the UN system report to the SG on what we are delivering, and the SG is able to push the ambition and ensure that we are delivering. But it's also a coherence mechanism, because the way we are implementing the pact is through a whole of the UN system approach. So we are already seeing results. You heard about the resolution that was recently adopted on introducing 2 new mechanisms that promote global cooperation on the governance of AI, comprising an independent scientific panel and a global dialogue. The outcome of Seville conference not only references the pact, but it takes forward key aspects of the pact, whether it's on debt, concessional finance, and credit rating agencies. We're seeing encouraging reference to the pact in the draft outcome document for the World Social Summit. And we need to make sure that all the upcoming intergovernmental processes, there's nothing below the pact. This high-level week itself is a testament of pact in action, because we've had a number of events that are directly derived from the pact, whether it's a digital cooperation day, which took place on Monday, the Security Council debate on AI, to the first biennial conference with the heads of international financial institutions. But as Ambassador Wallace mentioned, a lot of progress is being made at the country level with our UN resident coordinators and UN country teams, which are working with the governments to anchor pact implementation, national strategies, and SDG acceleration plans. Now, across all the UN mandated areas, we are seeing lots of progress. I'll give a few examples just in the interest of time. On SDGs, we are leveraging high impact initiatives that are implemented in many countries. For example, on global, there's a global accelerator on jobs and social protection. There's tax for SDGs. There are programs on ending violence against women. These are enhancing our SDG delivery on the ground. On peace and security, the SG recently released a report on the impact of increased military spending on SDGs, which is a call to invest in people and not weapons. The review of peace operations is underway with broad consultations that many of you are involved in. The Global Digital Compact, we have got a giga initiative that is led by ITU and UNICEF that is aiming at connecting all schools by 2030. There is a SG's report which was released earlier this year on new financing options for AI capacity building. On youth, momentum has been unprecedented. We have the UN Youth Fund, which will be delivered by the end of this year, together with other mechanisms, the investment platform, and the principles of meaningful youth engagement. On future generations, we are embedding, we are enhancing our capacity so that we drive futures thinking agenda within the system, but also support member states upon request. Now, let me briefly talk about the priorities, and I know Nodala is giving me a sign that time is up. So on the priorities going ahead, number one, we will continue to work with the PGA and member states champions like Ambassador Wallace and the other member states that are here to sustain momentum. And this momentum is not only here in New York, but also at the regional level and at the country level. We are embedding Pact in our strategic plans. This will make sure that the Pact becomes the DNA of everything that we do in the system. We are expanding partnerships with, of course, expanding and strengthening partnerships with civil society, private sector, academia, philanthropies, and others. And as we broaden these partnerships, coordination will become so important. And I want to thank again all the partners that have put together this event, because this is coordination in practice. Instead of organizing individual Pact events, you came together and organized one event. We want to enhance our tracking, reporting, and communicating of progress. And lastly, we want to prepare groundwork for the reviews that are coming, including interface and linkages with other global processes. None of this would be achieved without you. Many of you are already developing key products, your mapping processes, your monitoring implementation, providing research. There is a handbook that Ambassador Wallace talked about on DFG. All these contributions are indispensable and complementary to the work that as a secretariat we are doing. We have also set up our own tracking system, and we have launched a website. We can give you the details. This is a dedicated website on Pact for the Future, which will provide all stakeholders, including you, access to progress updates based on the data that is in our tracking system. And now Pact for the Future also has presence on LinkedIn to promote outreach and engagement. Excellencies, colleagues and friends, Pact for the Future is our collective promise to build a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world grounded in solidarity, equity, and intergenerational justice. That promise can only be filled with multi-stakeholder partnerships envisioned in the Pact. So I look forward to hearing your ideas today on how we can deepen our collaboration in the second year of implementation for the people and for the planet today and for future generations. And you can count on us as executive office of the Secretary General to continue to be trusted and reliable partners, accompanying each other with you on this journey. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Themba. I mean, there's clearly just a lot of work happening, a lot of good work, and the team is working very diligently on all of this. And thank you for delineating much of the progress and also your priorities for the in the office and such. It's a lot to take in. It's a big agenda. But the key right now, as we were talking about earlier, is carving out those strategic priorities and moving forward on them. And I'm really happy to hear the focus on partnerships, because we are here to help you facilitate all this. And thank you again. You mentioned on a couple of occasions the GDC and AI, and so I'm really happy that we have with us here online Lucia Velasco, who is Senior Advisor on AI Policy. And she will be joining us now from a very nice view somewhere.
This is Madrid, but I'm in New York.
Yes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
But yes, thank you for having me, and apologies because I'm not part of those strong people in the room, and my body is definitely giving up. But I'm happy to join you online, and I just want to start thanking Themba for that gesture and for keeping in mind that we shouldn't fall back and, you know, give any space on gender equality. So thank you for having that in mind. I've seen so many manuals recently that I am very appreciative of that gesture that you just had. And also thank you to the ambassador for that very inspiring speech that, you know, really turns the energy after this very polarizing week, I'd say. So thank you very much. I'll start by saying that I'm with the Office for Digital and Emerging Technologies, and we had a very, very intense week, as the rest of you. As it has been said, the Pact should remain, I mean, remains a landmark achievement, and as we move into implementation, it is very important to maintain the integrity of the pact. The UN system, as it has been said as well, has a very important role to support this process, but the responsibility is, and the resources and power to act rest with member states and with the stakeholders as well. So this is a collective effort, and despite the headwinds facing the organization, there is strong momentum to move forward with the Global Digital Compact, and we see that in many ways. But importantly, we see concrete progress, which is difficult these days. And it was briefly mentioned, but for us, it was very important yesterday to witness the high-level dialogue on AI governance finally launched, and also the importance of that resolution who actually set up the dialogue and the panel, which was adopted by consensus by all member states. So that is very, very important, especially in such a hot topic like AI, with the underlying dynamics that the technology has to be able to consensuate to these two global mechanisms was something that it will be difficult to see again, at least in the short term. So something to congratulate the member states for, and also the community around that, and also a way of shining a light and demonstrating that the pact is being implemented. Also, I'm not sure if you are aware, but yesterday during the high-level dialogue, the Secretary General announced that the open call is now open for experts to apply to the International Scientific Panel on AI. So it will be very important that experts from every country and from all geographies apply to be part of this global effort. And these processes show that, you know, policy and science are advancing in parallel in a way that broadens participation across regions. We are also seeing advances on capacity building with the Secretary General's report on innovative funding options for AI. And we've witnessed several philanthropies, member states, and universities who have already expressed readiness to take forward some of their recommendations and wanting to support this effort. So signals are there, and resources are starting to align with political and scientific processes. Hopefully, this will be also carried forward by member states, and this was also part of the speech of the Secretary General yesterday. On the internal side, as the director was mentioning, the design of the compact deliberately avoids new reporting structures and leverages the existing architecture. On the Global Digital Compact audit, the Office for Digital and Emerging Technologies and ITU co-chair the Working Group on Digital Technologies, which brings together over 40 UN entities, and each objective is led by the relevant agencies, like connectivity by the UN UNDP, human rights by, obviously, Human Rights Commissioner and UNESCO, and so on. And AI, the AI part is led by Audit, ITU, and UNESCO. So this arrangement strengthens coordination while keeping the system lean. Looking ahead, allow me to highlight three priorities. First, endorsements of the compact to reinforce its legitimacy and support our uptake. Second, engagement through the upcoming portal, which will connect stakeholders directly with implementation pathways. And third, the local and regional phase of implementation that has already been mentioned, and which should begin now with us supporting resident coordinators and UN country teams to deliver impact on the ground. So we just, encouraging again stakeholders to reach out to the office. Some names you might want to write down are Isabel and Filippo, who are the key contacts for the Global Digital Compact and for the coordination mechanism. And as we co-create dialogues led by stakeholders and supported by the UN, we really want to accelerate progress and implementation. And for that, we obviously need everyone. So thank you very much. And again, sorry for not being able to make it, but I wish you a fruitful day. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, and really for the effort. I know that you're not feeling well, so it's really again really maybe one of the themes we're hearing here is just the level of commitment of people in this room and in the neighborhood to this agenda. Those who believe are true believers, and really appreciate that. And thank you for sharing with us your priorities. And you mentioned your third priority, the local and regional phase of implementation that has already been a theme, I think, in a number of the comments that we've had today. And I think that Elizabeth and I were actually in a conversation last night, very interesting one, about North-South dialogue and the transformation of the global system. And I think in some respects, to the degree that we're all aware that, as Elizabeth said in her opening, that the system really is in essence in an existential moment. One of the opportunities is to finally actually deliver on commitments to locally led and globally supported processes in a way that perhaps has not been fully implemented before. And so as a segue, we've got a tremendous panel here to provide civil society insights to offer their perspectives from youth-led regional and grassroots organizations, sharing how the Pact is resonating at local and global levels. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much. Nice to have you. So we've got Ishan Shah, Next Generation Fellow, and my colleague at C4UN, Giovanna Quelle from the Igarapé Institute of Brazil, Elena Josie, Project Starling, and Caroline Dunton. Yep. Oh, there. Wait, I'm going in the wrong. I skipped over you on my thing. We got I got her in the wrong order here. Okay. And then online, we've got Njeri Magiru of the Impact Coalition for Future Generations, and Yash Dadimala, Impact Coalition on AI Governance for Humanity. And then also online, Insa Mala from the Cameroon Future Generations, also virtual. So we'll start though with Ishan. Please, Ishan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it's great to be here, and great to be here 1 year later. I know all of us in this room put a tremendous amount of work and effort over many, many years to get to where we are today with the Pact and its annexes. I'll start first by speaking with my Coalition for the UN We Need hat on, and really just to say that on behalf of the Information Clearinghouse team, we have released 2 reports this year, just this month actually, to mark 1 year of the Pact for the Future. The first is a civil society report. It's a survey that went out to all of our civil society networks and partners and really gathered a lot of data on what civil society are doing at the regional, global, and national levels to implement the Pact for the Future. And that was coordinated by our colleague Eliane, who is here, and invite you all to read that report. It's a really inspiring, synthesis of what civil society are actually doing to, take the Pact forward and bring it back to their communities and constituencies and the networks that they represent. The second report is an annual report on the Pact for the Future. I won't go into too much detail into that one because it alludes to what Temba has already spoken about. It shows that the Pact is still alive. It shows what has moved since September 2024, whether that's with FFD, the Second World Social Summit, CSW revitalization. It covers all 5 chapters, and it's really an objective analysis of what's happened since September 2024, what's been taken forward, and what can we look forward to as well in this next year of Pact implementation. And now speaking with my UN Foundation Next Generation Fellow hat on, the Our Future Agenda team at UN Foundation has been really mobilizing young people around not only the Pact for the Future, but also the SDGs. As we know, the Pact for the Future is really our tool to look at what institutional shifts we need to get us back on track, get the SDGs back on track, and really mobilize the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. When the Pact was released, the Our Future Agenda team released a beautiful series called Pact Decoded, which really demystifies what the Pact is about. It leverages the language of the Pact in a way that meets young people where they're at. And it does so in a creative means. It does so digitally, it does so creatively, using graphics, and really making the Pact more relatable to the people that it's supposed to serve, in particular young people. And as the Next Generation Fellows will continue to take the work of the Pact forward, we'll be closely following the SG selection process. We'll be looking at the road to 2027. And of course, we'll be looking at what the Pact really stands for, looking ahead to beyond 2030, to this vision of what the world should look like in 2100, how we can really harness this strategic foresight, this thinking about future generations. And most importantly, how can we really turn these commitments in the Pact into concrete actions to realize this world that we all dream of, and what does that mean for us in practice. So really looking forward to working with all of you in the room moving forward across stakeholders and generations, and really thank you for your dedication, and really looking forward to this next year of Pact implementation. Thank you.
We'll just, I think we just go down the line. Yeah, so Caroline, please.
Thank you so much to the organizers for inviting me and having me here. I'm very grateful. My colleague Dawiya Chalali is online. So my name is Caroline Dunton. I work at UNU CPR on our Global Governance Innovation Project. And my colleague Dawiya is based in Geneva, and she is working on future generations. And so what we're going to do is I'll have you look at the screen back there. And I'll give you a little bit of a quick background on what you're seeing, and then she'll walk through or she'll run the time lapse of this platform, and I'll speak through it. So to support member states and the UN system, and to help understand how long-term governance is practiced across the world, what it means to protect future generations from different policy perspectives, and how to engage on such an agenda, UNU CPR and close partners, including the School of International Futures, EOSG, EU Joint Research Center, and Impact Coalition, have built this worldwide participative database for future generations with Academy, a tech company based in Wales. So in a few weeks, this platform will be public. You'll be able to access it to research what governance mechanisms exist in different countries that are committed to future generations. So for the purpose of this event, we've created a time lapse tracking where the Declaration for Future Generations implementation has progressed. In yellow are the ones that specifically mention the Declaration for Future Generations. So for the purpose of time, we'll zoom in on a couple examples. Dawiya, do you want to start it? Amazing. Thank you. So in India, Maharashtra, and in Australia, well-being for future generations bills have been introduced with similar purposes, placing a positive duty on public bodies to take into account long-term impacts of their decisions and creating an independent statutory commissioner for future generations to oversee implementation. To jump to Kenya and Cameroon, institutional structures have been created following the Summit of the Future in Kenya. It's a Senate caucus on future generations that has adopted a strategy after the summit. And in Cameroon, 2 Indigenous commissioners for future generations were adopted. In Oman, Canada, and Nigeria, ministerial programs and budgets specifically targeting intergenerational fairness have been adopted. In Gambia and Syria, constitutional reforms aiming at introducing future generations in the management of resources have been created. Thank you. In Denmark and Norway, there are citizen coalitions focused on advocating for institutional frameworks for future generations. And then if we jump to Mexico, there are litigation cases, as you probably know, at the national and multilateral level, putting future generations at the center of attention. So notably, there's the one at the ICJ, one in Mexico at the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and as well in the African Court of Human Rights. So this database is participative, and we welcome your participation as experts in this area to submit new cases that you may know about, that we may not know about yet, to add to the database. We want this platform to also be a space where you can learn from different country experiences, and we will analyze in more depth the impact of each initiative. And this is one of a couple digital initiatives. The one that I work on more closely, the Global Governance Innovation Platform, will have a sort of similar data visualization and interactive library where you can view our research. You'll be able to see how we've identified innovation in the multilateral system and see how it can be applied to other cases and calls for reform. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, we'll just keep going down the line. Yes.
Hello. Is it working? Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think it's the symptoms of like body falling down and all these steps are a sign of a good party. 80 years. We're doing it correctly. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in AI governance and AI education based in DC. And I'm also the global focal point for the Youth Science Policy Interface convened by the Major Group for Children and Youth, which brings together hundreds of young groups and networks on the topics of SDI. And I also have the honor of being a member of the core group coordinating the Impact Coalition for AI Governance for Humanity, supporting Linda Bonio from Lawyers Hub and Richard from Stimson Center alongside Nudara from C4UN and Mehdi, who's a Mercator Fellow. When I hear 80% of the commitments are with member states, that also signals to me that civil society has a really strong space and voice in this process. And I want to lead with the example of the Impact Coalition as an intergenerational solidarity movement and partnership movement. In Nairobi, I reached out 2 days before the conference to Nudara and Richard saying, hey, it's really important that youth voices be a part of the AI dialogue and governance stuff. They not only did invite the Youth Science Policy Interface and the Major Group to the Impact Coalition, but they invited us into the agenda setting. And we've had really impactful monitoring follow-up mechanisms for the Pact since then. And because I'm wearing 2 hats, I hope I get some grace with the time, but I'm gonna give you headlines. Each headline is a report, so please come talk to me afterwards. So at the GDC front, some of the key successes for the compact have been the conversations around public-private partnerships for DPI. And what do we need to think about interoperability of technology, technology transfer, and respect while centering human rights and biodiversity. I think the civil society's voice in it is on the human rights and biodiversity part, because I think member states are more focused on the technology adoption and interoperability part. And also, civil society has been really keen on mapping where does the CV outcome document connect to the GDC and how does that lead into the World Social Summit, leading into the 2028 review. What is unique about the GDC? It is the first document that really centers human rights in the digital space. We haven't had that done before. And it does it so fundamentally that it's not a question. And that is its biggest strength. Last but not least, AI governance. I invite you all to watch my intervention from yesterday. No, I'm joking. I think the unique opportunity of the AI dialogue is that we cannot let it be a member state driven process only. A huge amount of the responsibility rights on civil society solidarity. Coming to the youth hat that I also have, the UN Youth Fund that was mentioned earlier, we've had many consultations and strategies that the youth constituency has coordinated with recommendations to be reflected in an awareness raising plan that will be launched end of this month. For the Global Youth Investment Platform, youth have coordinated 2 consultations, one during the ECOSOC Youth Forum and one virtually, leading a review of the existing UN mandates on youth and financing. For the Meaningful Youth Engagement Core Principles, youth groups have actively led multiple focus groups. I've led a couple of them myself across the world. And they are going to feed into the task force, which we hope to empower and strengthen self-organizing youth constituencies. Well, all of these speak to great achievements. I would be remiss if I don't mention the compact's gaps, barriers caused by the lightning speed rate of technology development, and some clear withdrawals in disregard to some of the commitments already by tech companies and member states. And all of this in this echo of shrinking civil society engagement space, which we've all heard. As a young person, the youth mobilization in lead up to the Summit of the Future and the openness and the co-design spirit in which civil society was brought together gave me a lot of hope. The Nairobi Civil Society Conference was a unique point in the multilateral system. The coalitions and partnerships that were started there are witnesses and implementation follow-up mechanisms, and they need to be strengthened with resources. And the modalities for implementation and follow-up need to be multi-stakeholder in their inherent nature. I have two announcements to conclude, is that the Impact Coalition on AI Governance for Humanity will continue to walk the talk, and I'm excited now soon we will be merging with the Global AI Governance Alliance, and we have representatives for that in this room as well, and we invite you to talk further. And as the major group for children and youth, I ask everyone in this room, stand with youth constituencies and networks and movements. Believe in the transformative power of youth, women, and indigenous action in multilateral system. Thank you.
Giovanna, please.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be in the room with also so many partners. We've been working on this together for the past many years now. So this year marks 1 year of the Pact, but also 10 years of the Paris Agreement, yet the climate changing impacts are accelerating. We are above the 1.5. Last year was the hottest year on record. And I think the Pact helps to offer a roadmap also for climate action. It mentions scaling up the Paris Agreement, strengthening resilience, protecting ecosystem, and financing for developing countries. But the challenge, as it was mentioned here already, remains implementation. So COP30 in Brazil, less than 2 months from now, offers a turning point for people and the planet. We can use COP30 to mark which was also mentioned here already, the shift from negotiations to delivery. So bringing a COP to the Amazon is also very symbolic because it underscores the urgency of tackling deforestation and also what is at the global stake in terms of food, climate stability, and water. So I think the Brazilian COP30 presidency agenda aligns with the Pact in the sense that it wants to make up to the ambition of advancing a vision of a planet that is in harmony with nature. But to match the scale of this crisis, it's not only climate, but also we mentioned biodiversity, biodiversity loss, plastic pollution, and so on. We are living in what we call a multiple planetary crisis. We need more than incremental progress. At the GA, earlier this week, President Lula mentioned creating a council linked to the General Assembly to ensure coherence and accountability in climate action. Building on this, at Igarapé, we've been developing this idea of going further because we see the challenges as interconnected. So we are proposing it should be a council on climate and nature. So we need to recognize that we need to address agendas, not in silos, but in a more interconnected way. So to conclude, we need to leverage the UN80 initiative reform together with COP30 to translate the Pact into impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, maybe, no, it lighted up. Hello? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great indeed to see so many familiar faces. So I'm Elena from Project Starling. Project Starling is a rather new think and do tank working on multilateralism and global South empowerment. So we supported the Pact for the Future negotiations. And after that, we pivoted to financing for development, working with especially the least developed countries towards the outcome document of the fourth international conference on financing for development that is called Compromiso de Sevilla, that was just agreed in July in Spain. So the context was what we all know, very challenging for trillion gap USD in development finance during one of the most challenging moments in global development in history. And the Pact had required member states to come out with the ambitious outcome for FFD. Now, we think that the Compromiso delivered in the sense that there was a renewal in a global financing framework. There were no backtracking. There was building on existing policies and pushing some boundaries forward. Getting a consensus in itself was actually a success. And we praise really the leadership of the co-facilitators, which were Mexico, Norway, Zambia, and Nepal. Which showed that the new multilateralism is possible, one without the United States that withdrew from the negotiations. We also believe that the Compromiso was a major win for the Global South. It brought forward three key principles. One is maximize the impact and effectiveness of development financing. Secondly, Global South countries more voice on financial and debt structures, and also strengthen country leadership and ownership of the programming that, that is proposed. The Compromiso also, so I think, well, according to our analysis, it pushed forward boundaries a bit in policy on three main areas. One is addressing the debt crisis. It pushed policies to improve lending capacity, finance access, supporting borrower country cooperation with the Borrowers Forum that is going to be launched, and agreeing on talks to reform the debt structures at UN level. It also increased trade access for LDCs, which was very important for our constituency, and expanded domestic resource mobilization, strengthening the tax system, fighting illegal financial flows, and with donor promising to double their support in this area. Obviously, member states recognize that the current traditional aid doesn't really work, and there are some initiatives that are initiating to reimagine global cooperation. The FFD4 forum also saw the launch of a so-called Sevilla platform of action to support implementation and accountability. But as usual, this set of commitment really needs to be put to the test of time and see how implementation is taken forward. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. We're gonna go online in a second. And just one reflection upon each one of these presentations is that and also previously listened to Temba, is that there is so much work happening, so much progress happening. Yes, there's backtracking, but the progress and the backtracking kind of go together in some way, because some of the backtracking is built upon this narrative that we're hearing that the system is in free fall, and so why commit? But when you look at actually how much work, how much progress is happening, we have to work against that narrative. And I think the Compromiso de Sevilla is a great example of that. I mean, this was actually an international agreement that came at a time of division and actually delivered, as you say. So super important. Wonderful. Now we'll turn on online here. We'll first hear from Injiri Magiru, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. It's a real pleasure to join you for these discussions. And I am the co-chair of the Impact Coalition for Future Generations, alongside Jacob Ellis, or Jack Ellis, as we know him, and Alimi Salifu. On a personal note, as a precursor, I recall attending Summit of the Future, and especially the Action Days about a year ago now. And the experience was so rich with connecting across diverse contexts with like minds, different actors, all of us committed to shared causes, and connecting also with policymakers that were dedicated to creating the institutional, structural, procedural spaces and frameworks that we need to realize our common goals. So it's a real pleasure to join you here at this first anniversary, recalling that coalition of like intention. And for me, the Impact Coalition that I speak as part of, as one of many Impact Coalitions, is an embodiment. It is a signifier of this continued momentum, sort of contributing to the transmutation of the coalescence of activity that we experienced a year ago into more widespread impact. So I want to share from that lens that we've taken the connections that we built on a year ago and intentionally worked towards ensuring continued impact and gathering of momentum. So the Impact Coalition has grown to a network of over 500 members now, and 500 members that are also largely institutional. So they're representative of a wider network of community, more than the 500. But the 500 is what we have on the book. And we are committed to championing the mobilizing of long-term action in support of the Declaration on Future Generations. We are really motivated by putting into action the Pact of the Future, specifically the Declaration on Future Generations. And we're grounded in a commitment to shift policymaking, decision-making, our priorities from a focus on only short-termism, both at global, regional, and national levels, to include a consideration of the future generation impacts and the kind of longevity required by a long-termist perspective and lens. And we really believe that a short-termism perspective contributes to inequality, it contributes to insecurity, and a longer-term lens would allow us to look at the sort of deeper causal issues that we need to address and also give it due diligence, understanding that the kinds of transformations we require to achieve the goals we aspire to are going to take an embedded effort that continues across generations. So it's more than a it's more than a simplistic aspiration. It's a deep commitment to the success of the goals that we are committing to as a civilization in this time. So we are above all a community of civil society, but we're widely connected with different actors as well. And we do champion the work in different spaces. Some examples of what we're doing is supporting the development of a global database of case studies. We are committed across some pillars of activity, including the global network, but also knowledge exchange and innovation. So this global database of case studies allow us to share information that can contribute to different diverse initiatives where we can build on best practice and also learn from each other's successes and failures and build on these lessons to achieve the agendas that we want. Then we also welcome and encourage your engagement with some of our outputs, including an handbook on implementation. So in as much as we share knowledge and exchange information on innovative practices, we do advocate for the application and uptake of these practices, and we aim to share them in user-friendly modalities. So the handbook on implementation produced by the School of International Futures is a really great place to start. If you as an actor, if you as an institutional representative, as a decision maker, want to think around how can you begin to implement in practical ways the aspirations from the Declaration on Future Generations. Then we are also committed to linking the grassroots to the global. And we have a number of intergenerational town halls. We have convened 18 so far. And these aim to sort of practically support intergenerational dialogues, but also ensure that we are inclusive of all voices from the grassroots to the global. And we use these platforms to ensure that future generations, in terms of current embodiment, but also considerations of the unborn, can contribute to decision-making at a broader level. We're deeply encouraged by actions across different regions. We are also very sensitive to the contextualization of the work that we do. So we ensure that through our work, we represent activities happening in, for instance, Africa. There's some work happening in Nigeria, where the Office of the Vice President are actively building anticipatory governance and resilience capacity at the national level. We share best practice from this activity. We share best practice from different regions of the world so we can build on contextualized examples and ensure relevance in terms of implementation based on the localities of our different actors and memberships. In essence, we aim to be a docking station for future generations and to hold the agenda of future generations. So in closing, I do welcome you to engage with us as a space for coalition building, for knowledge exchange, for sharing on best practices, on promoting advocacy actions, and in particular, linking different communities across different diverse regions from the global to the grassroots. And we invite you all, governments, organizations, individuals, to join our conversations. We see ourselves as a route, a channel, an avenue for actioning the implementation of the Futures Generations Declaration. And we're very excited. We're excited about the momentum we're building and the work that we see we can continue towards. And for this, we do require your support. We acknowledge also that there are different avenues to pursue. For instance, the envoy for future generations and the need to overcome sort of some challenges and bridge routes of understanding here. And so we see ourselves as a community. We see ourselves as a community as part of broader communities, and we welcome engagement from that lens. Thank you so much for the platform, and excited to hear about the other work from the panelists that are contributing today.
Excellent, thank you. Now we'll turn to Cameroon, to Mala, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to speak here today. I will begin with a phrase. I want to think that Future Generations Agenda provides us with a framework for going beyond the silos and the segmentation that may be perceived in the implementation of the SDGs, and also to think long-term beyond Agenda 2030. But however, we need to be careful not to be trapped into the short-term happenings, including some international actors that are plunging our multilateral institutions into crisis, but we should be able to rise above this. I'm Samala, and I work with the UNESCO Most Bridges Coalition through the University of Cologne, and I'm also affiliated with SWAF. But I'm the Future Generations Commissioner for the Kingdom of Mbesa in Cameroon, and I will be talking mostly today from with the cap of the Future Generations Commission. And I want to share some of the work that we are doing in Cameroon around the future generations, agenda, and long-term governance. And I will do this in 3 segments, one at the national level, then the other one at the bottom level, and then how it fits into continental initiatives. And I will wrap up with a call to action. At the national level, prior to the Summit of the Future last year, I encouraged and mobilized the Cameroonian government via the Ministry of External Relations, and we were able to organize a pre-summit national consultation in Yaoundé that brought together UN agencies, government ministries, and civil society organizations, and international experts and local experts to discuss issues around the summit, around the Pact, and also around long-term governance and future generations. And even after the Pact and after the Pact was adopted last year, between that time and quite recently, there have been some efforts at the national level to convene another gathering to discuss national implementation. But these issues, these plans have stalled, have slowed down, because this is a year full with a lot of elections in Cameroon, including a presidential election that is happening next month. But however, because we are doing this work from a whole of society perspective, and agreeing and accepting that we need to approach it both from the bottom and also from the top, I have diverted a lot of my attention towards supporting local initiatives, and this has particularly been with supporting indigenous kingdoms. Of a lot of these kingdoms. Mbesa was the first one. I am a native of Mbesa. Mbesa created the first Indigenous Commission for Future Generations in last year. And this year, 2 other commissions have been created in the kingdoms of Nka and Ajum. And then we are having conversations with many other kingdoms and also local councils like Belo and Fundong and fandoms like Com and Dinoni and many others to create similar commissions. And when we work with this, and we're also planning to then merge them into some kind of a national network of initiatives for future generations in Cameroon. But one thing that is particularly striking about the approach with working with indigenous kingdoms is that often when we talk about local governance, people end around the municipal area. But what we need to know is that for countries like Cameroon, and I guess across many other countries in Africa, we have kingdoms that predated colonialism and have resilient and strong governance mechanisms in place that also are quite stable, even when national politics is not stable. And so we are leveraging this, and then we are also keying into the real concerns of people on the ground and leveraging what people have already been doing in terms of climate protection and climate action, nature protection, issues around health and education, issues around well-being, but also issues around housing, issues about water, drinking water, and many other issues, even around infrastructure and budget and so on and so forth, and also even self-reliant associations that are able to fund rest and carry on with community development in the absence of government funding. This being said, it is important for us to note that these initiatives in Cameroon are not only within Cameroon, they also fit into larger initiatives around the sub-region, particularly in the Congo Basin region, but also around the African continent, where, for example, we are keying into an initiative called the Fairer Futures for Africa that is aimed at building a long-term governance capability across the continent. And this is driven by the Society for International Development and also the School of International Futures. So all these activities, we are doing them, and what they really prove to us is that the Pact for the Future, and particularly the Declaration for Future Generations, is a lens and a framework on which to build on existing initiatives, but also galvanize momentum to create visions of the future that we want for ourselves and the generations to come after us. And it is very interesting to do this work in ways that people can actually identify with when we are addressing the needs of communities at the very basic level. However, as you all know, we look up to the UN to continue to guide us in this. Of course, there are also already mechanisms in place now to help us with dealing with this, or we carrying on with this momentum and the agenda on future generations and the Pact as a whole. But we understand that we need a champion for the future generations in particular. So I want to end here by saying this week even, more than 50 sister organizations with whom we are working and 100 counterparts from all about 100 countries around the world have signed a letter urging member states and the UN Secretary General to appoint the UN envoy for future generations this year. The goodwill to work on the future generations agenda is here. There is no doubt about it, but it is our one clear call as champions working on the ground that we need to make this appointment now. We don't need to be afraid of short-term issues around funding. If we are talking about long-term governance, we have people with the ability to imagine other ways of funding the Office of the Future Generations Envoy. It must not be classical pockets of funding within the UN system. We can be able to come up with innovative ideas, leveraging philanthropy, and be able to fund this office, because we think that the work we are doing at the grassroots and at the national levels and across the regions of the world needs a champion within the offices of the UN. Thank you so much. And we encourage you all to sign the letter.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Wonderful. We've got you mentioned champions. We've got a lot of champions in this room. And so we want to take the time to have a little bit of a moderated dialogue, not simply a Q&A, but we want to hear all of your views. I just want to acknowledge some of the member state champions that we have in the room. We have representatives from Brazil and Germany, Portugal, Sweden, New Zealand, and perhaps a few others, but the floor is open for any interjections. I know I can see my eyes aren't so great, but I can see in the screen we've got some questions on the chat. But I want to first come to the room. So anybody who would like to take the floor, yes, please, in the back. I think we'll bring you a microphone so also people online can hear you, and I'll hear it too.
Hi, my name is Ambika Smrithya Howard. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at the Solutions Journalism Network. We use a journalism approach to doing research and insights. It's very clear to me how you're working across stakeholder groups, the UN, multinationals, the governments. I'm curious how you're working cross-sector, specifically like for those focused on climate and others focused on economics and civil stuff and peace resolution. How are you working specifically across sector specific issues?
Fantastic. We'll take a couple. We've got here in the front row. I think you had your hand up, yeah?
Thank you very much. My name is Cornelia Jerisch, and I'm from the German mission, and I've been part of this whole endeavor for the last 3 years now, I would say. And it's so nice to be back with everyone who has been around, because a lot of people have already left. And it makes, I have to really say, I have some remarks that I'm not going to read them, because I feel so motivated by this panel, because there is so much that we don't know that is going on. And I think this is really something, I mean, we try to follow, we try to track, but it's very difficult to track. And especially what is going on the grassroots level, I had no idea, and that makes me feel very good. I will call my ambassador in Geneva. She's now in Geneva, and we'll also let her know, because I think we just have to speak more about it and really to copy these very good examples. And we as Germany, we are definitely committed. We have also our priorities in the Pact with regard to peacekeeping and peace building, but also many others. And the most important thing, and this is, we think the Pact today is so much more important than it has been a year ago. And because we could not do this now, I think we could not repeat what we did last year. It would not happen. And now we have this vision, we have this blueprint, and I think everyone accepts it. I mean, we had these voices that had a lot of doubts. It was not easy to get to the Pact, but they have been quiet. So I think this is so helpful, and I think we can only also do the UN80 reform because we have the Pact, and it's not a contradiction. And this is why Ambassador Wallace has left now. But I'm really looking forward also to his leadership, because he has been part of the whole Pact story, and he is now taking the leadership again for this next step for reform. And I was also very encouraged about his optimism. And I think we really need this. I mean, and I think when we negotiated the Pact, and Ambassador Neville and Ambassador Antje, they kept their optimism. And Danielle, I see her, and we were sometimes very frustrated as being the experts and overwhelmed, and how is this all going to happen? But the ambassadors were there, and they kept being optimistic every single day, and they got us all through there. And I think in this spirit, I think we can really go on with the implementation, even in this very difficult times. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. You can just pass it to the next one. Motivation and optimism from Germany. I love it. Okay.
Muy buenos días. Yo no speak in English. I'm sorry. Voy a hablar muy poquito en castellano y gracias al Google Traductor que pude traducirme. Pero primero agradecer por la invitación. Muchas gracias por esta oportunidad. Yo soy parlamentario del Mercosur por la provincia de San Juan, de la República Argentina. Y creo que es muy bueno poder estar trabajando. Quiero hacer 3 reflexiones nada más y poner a disposición también el Parlamento. Creo que lo que se ha dicho acá está bueno. Cooperación, territorialización y regionalización. Me tocó, antes de ser diputado del Mercosur, me tocó trabajar como coordinador de la Agenda 2030 en la República Argentina. Y vemos que si no nos juntamos y trabajamos en una comunidad organizada, difícilmente, como decía el Papa Francisco, nadie se salva solo. Nuestras comunidades necesitan que sigamos trabajando en la implementación, territorialización y cooperación con la Agenda 2030, y el Pacto del Futuro es fundamental para esto. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Rosie, are you jumping in as our interpreter? Is that what I'm? Wonderful, amazing. This is a parliamentarian from Mercosur.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna do my best to capture everything that Matthias just shared. He's Matias Sotomayor. He's from Argentina. He's a member of the Parliament of the Mercosur, which is like a regional platform as well for us for trading and politics in our region. He's very happy to be here, and he wants to mention 3 pillars, which is like territorialization, also implementation and cooperation in order to work on implementation of the Pact for the Future. Also, he wants to mention that he had the opportunity to work in Argentina in different spaces. And that's why he thinks that implementing the Pact for the Future not only can, consider the spaces at the global level, but also the territorialization and the cooperation among different agendas, such as the 2030 agenda and the Pact for the Future. Okay. So Matias also is part of, the Parliament of the Mercosur is part also of the Impact Lab Coalition. And he's mentioning the importance on being part of the coalition because it's an intergenerational effort where we are able to connect with different stakeholders from civil society, academia, government, intergovernmental spaces, and we are working together in order to move forward for the implementation for the Pact of the Future.
Thank you. Any others right now? There was this one. I think the first was a direct question for Themba, I believe. Was that, yeah. But is there others that want to jump in first? Yes, please.
My name is Kat Tully from International Futures. I'm just really interested about the role of business in this and just interested in people's ideas on whether you've actually seen any businesses leaning into, in particular, the declaration, I think, on future generations, or what you see as being the potential for turbocharging them as a key stakeholder in the next 3 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, Vidar, yeah, please.
Thanks, everyone. Hi, Nadara Youssef. I'm going to be wearing my hat in this instance with the Global Governance Innovation Network, just to put on record in this dialogue some of the things that they've been working on as well. They're currently across the street doing a book launch. So that is why they're not here right now. So the Global Governance Innovation Network, I think many may be aware, especially our friends from member states who have been really helpful in this process, have worked on launching a Pact Innovation Forum. The idea is one of the biggest things that came out of the Summit to the Future process is people working together. Like it was the fact that member states, the UN system, and civil society had to come together to be able to push that pact through. So we wanted to keep that space alive. The Pact Innovation Forum hosts 2 main flagship initiatives, the Pact Monitoring Toolkit. You can ask Michael Collins over there more about that. He's the data guy, not me. But basically, we've done a couple log frames to look at where do we already have indicators for Pact implementation through the Sustainable Development Goals and other indicators the UN has already worked on, and where do we need to plug in the gaps to help us with monitoring and tracking. The second initiative is the Pact Innovation Plan. The idea is there are, at any given point in time, a whole handful of intergovernmental processes happening, civil society processes, G20, WTO, etc., processes taking place. How are we mapping all of that into the Pact for the Future actions to make it as easy as possible for champions and civil society actors to go into these events and processes, pushing the Pact for the Future in various ways, complementing that with resources and track 1.5 dialogues. So it is an open call for people who want to support that, get involved. We want it to be a coordination platform for folks that are working on it, as opposed to us just pushing our own agendas and thought processes. So just wanted to let folks know that that's been in the works as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, sure. Just keep it going. Is that okay? We just kind of keep it going. Yeah. And I'll come back.
Thank you very much. My name is Vitorino. I'm from the Mission of Portugal. It's a pleasure to be here and to listen to everyone's efforts to keep the pact alive. I'll echo everything that my colleague from Germany has already said, but I'll try to tease a little bit the discussion and ask a question. So we've heard that one of the most important processes that is about to start is the selection process of the next SG. We also heard that if the pact was to be negotiated today, it wouldn't happen. So my question is, in this room, is there any expectation that the future SG would seek to create a new vision for the UN, a new pact, a new commitment, or can we entrust in the next leadership of this organization that the pact is the vision for the upcoming years, and this is the one to remain in force for the next 10 years or 5 years, whatever is decided by the General Assembly for a mandate of the next Secretary General. Thank you. Just to tease a bit the discussion.
Excellent. I think that's a good, we've got a lot on the table. Maybe could we come back and get some responses to some of these, and then we'll probably should have another round. So we've got questions around the SG race, around business, and around the SG activities. Yeah, please, Thamma, you first.
Thanks. I think those are very extremely insightful interventions. Some of those issues don't have easy answers, and that's why we need to come together as stakeholders so that we can co-create solutions. Now, although the Pact has distinct chapters, and although our implementation arrangements that we have set up as a system within specific areas, so you have, for instance, you heard about the youth working group, there's work around peace and security, et cetera, et cetera. That's just an organizing principle, but in practice, these issues are so much interconnected, and for us in the system, our platforms for getting that coherence is the steering committee, because all the working groups come together in the steering committee, and this is a platform to ensure that there's coherence across the system in the way we are implementing the pact. But this coherence needs also to trickle down. And like I shared, at the country level, our entry points are UN resident coordinators and UN country teams. And these have been tasked to have conversations, convenings with governments to see how the pact can land at the country level. Now, through these convenings, it's not just one particular stakeholder. There are stakeholders that are coming from different sectors of the government. Recently, I was part of a convening that took place in Nigeria, convened by the government of Nigeria and the UN resident coordinator in Nigeria, and they were looking at peace and security. And the stakeholders that were in that room were not only people from peace and security sector. They were different stakeholders, not only from government, but also civil society, private sector, et cetera, et cetera. So in short, we need to encourage more of that. And it's our joint responsibility, because some of you are involved in specific areas of work. As you advance this work, please create opportunities for interfacing with others who are working in other sectors. It's also important to ensure that we have integrated approach towards implementation. I come from a background where I was supporting a small island developing state, or the small island developing states, and these are small governments. I'll give you an example. When I visited one of the countries that I was covering, I went to the airport. The guy who stamped my passport at the airport, I was surprised to see him at the Ministry of Finance when I went to see the minister. And he is the same guy. He's also a director in the Ministry of Finance. And so if you go to a small government like that, and today it's Pact for the Future, tomorrow it's SDGs, then it's food systems, then it's, so we need to make sure that these are implemented in an integrated way And that is again why we are working at the country level with resident coordinators, because they are able to look at all these agendas and work with the government to make sure that as a UN system, we are providing integrated support in the way we implement. Otherwise, it's easy to overwhelm, particularly small governments, when we have agendas that sometimes, if we are not coherent, they may seem as if they are competing. But again, in the case of Pact and the SDGs, these are implemented together, and the Pact is there to turbocharge SDG implementation. Private sector engagement, extremely important. Just 2 days ago, through the UN Global Compact, we met private sector networks, International Organization of Employers, there was International Chamber of Commerce, and some other private companies. And they're very keen to support and to be engaged in Pact implementation. Just as we are engaging with civil society, we're also engaging with private sector, and they're very keen. And we're also trying to agree on, what is the best coordinated way of engaging private sector. From our side, private sector engagement is led by our colleagues in the UN Global Compact. And there's already a lot that has been happening. There was a business forum as part of UNGA. There was a business forum. During FFD, there was a business forum as well. In the upcoming World Social Summit, there is also a business forum, because when it comes to Pact implementation, some of the meetings may not even have the title Pact, because it's about the issues. So you can have convenings about youth, for instance, and you can have convenings about peace and security. So that's what we are seeing, that with the private sector in particular, they want things that are tangible. And a lot of them are interested in the digital space, for instance, in the space around AI. And we will try as much as possible to harness. And we are encouraging private sector to say, one, we want your voice to continue to add the voice of all of you in supporting or defending multilateralism. We want the solutions that are coming from private sector, whether it's technology, whether it's investments, especially now with ODA decreasing. The private sector is increasingly playing an important role in investment. So let me stop there so that we can also hear from others. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I think, Yash, you had something, no?
Thank you so much. I feel like you set up my use case really well. And I'm going to be very specific here, like something that has happened in the last 1 year. And I'm going to start with the Pact negotiations. I have to say, as a young person, my belief in the multilateral system actually benefited through that process, because Ambassador Milambo and Ambassador Nostrom, like I had their numbers and they were like, come talk to us. Like we had multiple rounds of consultations. And the same with Ambassador from Germany and Finland. They were so open to discussions that we felt like we could reach out to them for help. Now, why do I set that up? So 2 of the agendas that I've been focused on, AI literacy for young people and women, and entrepreneurship to unlock digital futures for young people. And the reason I say is that SDI Forum this year was focused on technology facilitation, innovation. We had the 10-member group, and I did not know who to contact or how to get in coordination with the co-chairs for the SDI Forum. I reached out to Ambassador from Sweden. She connected me. We were able to get funding for 10 people from Africa to come to SDI Forum, which in turn made it into the outcome document, which also connected us to the US Business Alliance, which G0, Microsoft, MasterCard, and we were able to institutionalize that for this upcoming SDI Forum for youth entrepreneurship and digital, which now again connects to this ANGA, an event we organized with ITU, WIPO, and ITC about digital entrepreneurship. That's one track. And it took so many stakeholders, and all were willing to do that. And coming to the AI literacy part, we were talking about education, and actually Germany was also funding a lot of young people for a lot of the work. We were able to get young people to the HESI Forum, and through the HLPF process, we were able to get points about AI education through the GDC, that it's a required thing that member states have to commit. And we worked with a couple of friends for science group with ISC coordinates, which is another stakeholder group for science. And we were able to get funding for this UNGA through ITU SDG Digital, which was another collaboration with the US Business Alliance, funding for AI literacy for young girls building from ITU's gender agenda. So I think all of these are really the Pact implementation in real world with all these stakeholders. And when we go to talk to them, I say, hey, you agreed to this. This was action number 36. Can we talk about it? And that at least gets us a meeting. So hopefully that kind of helps how I operate in this space.
Joanna, you look like you're about to jump in. Yes.
So yeah, very three quick points. So first, on working across sectors, we work with multi-stakeholder partnerships from local to global levels. So to give two concrete examples from the room, we work with UN University on climate governance and the Climate Council. We work with Calder, who is there on the synergies of the Rio Conventions. Just to add a bit on the role of business, I think it's key for some aspects in terms of implementation. For example, on the climate space, to restore nature, you need to work with the private sector with high integrity business to implement it. And the last point, but maybe I'll leave to Elena to say more on Vitorino's question on the next SG. I think the key, of course, it's always welcome fresh visions, but we had a lot during the past years. So I think hopefully the new Woman SG builds on what we've been working and doing and the vision from the Pact and UN80 and so on.
Thank you. Indeed, I wanted to try, I mean, not to answer, but pick on the provocation because I think it's very much front and center on everyone's mind. And with the UN80 process happening, and I hope, it's a pity that Ambassador Wallace left the room because it'd be great to get his views. He rejects the notion of an existential challenge to the system. I took note, that's what he said. But I think we need to be conscious about the reality of things. So indeed, there's a lot to build on, but also hopefully the new SG will have a vision that meets the people of the world where they are really, because we can all be very positive in this room, but there's also a lot of despair, and move the system forward. Like the system needs to evolve. The Pact has brought somewhere the UN80 discussion is going to be bringing us somewhere else, but the trajectory of this SG finishing and the new SG coming up, I hope there's going to be new vision and new energy as well.
Great, thank you, Caroline. I'm going to come back to you. I want to gather a couple more comments we've got here. In particular, I want to go to we have an online Q&A, a couple questions here, and our colleague from UN Foundation.
Yeah, let's go online. Thanks, Adam. First of all, I want to thank everyone who joined us online. We have upwards of 60 people who are listening to this discussion, anywhere from Brazil to South Africa to across the US. Quite a few of them were congratulating you, Adam, on your new role. But they did also share a few questions, which I'm going to read out. One of the questions touched on UN80 and some of the budgetary measures that are happening across the street. The audience was interested, what role can regional organizations or regional coalitions play to advance the Pact's commitment? They were also quite keen to know how can the role of civil society groups be institutionalized and not ad hoc in implementation of the Pact. And there was also a question on the next SG selection, which was somewhat addressed, but the question was, how do you prioritize future generations' agenda as we head into the selection process for the next Secretary General?
Excellent, thank you. It's a lot there coming from online. I'm going to go to Rosie next, and then anyone else in this final round.
Thank you, everyone. It was like a very interesting conversation. My name is Rosie. I'm from Peru, and I'm representative of the Millennials Movement, but also we are part of the LAC Impact Coalition. And my question is related a little bit also with the work. So I also wanted to thank the office of Mr. Temakalua for the support, with Daniela for helping us to build capacities in the LAC region with different stakeholders, building on the point of Matias Sotomayor, who previously spoke. The coalition is a very interesting space because we have not only one set of stakeholders, we have different stakeholders, even like decision makers, national UN systems. We have UN ECLAC as an observer. We have the Mercosur as an observer. We have NGOs, academia from Argentina up to Honduras. We have different stakeholders. And we are working on this capacity building and advocating to regionalize the path for the future, because there are many things, for instance, such as the artificial intelligence agenda that needs also like a regional response, such as is happening in Europe. We need to work on that. Also peace and security, but considering our own issues. So my question goes around on, in the UN80 reform proposal, it's also mentioned that there is going to be a reform, or it's planned that the regional commissions are part of the reform. So I'm wondering how this structural reform of the UN system, perhaps, you consider can impact the implementation and also the regionalization of or localization of the Pact for the Future. And then also, which recommendations can you give us in order to look for more avenues for engagement, and also not only work around Latin Americans and Caribbean and the Caribbean region, but also work among different regions. I really like our colleagues from Africa. So I think like a Global South, cooperation as well around the Pact for the Future could be very interesting. So that's a question, comment. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. We've got about maybe 10 minutes or so. So I'm just going to collect final questions. And then
I
we'll
want
come
to
back
put
to the
myself
panel.
in the
Yeah.
queue as well.
Yeah. So Michael, yeah.
Hello, Rosa Lizardi with the Feminist Task Force. We work on gender equality to end poverty, conveners of the Women's Working Group on Financing for Development. And this is not so much a question, but comment, an invitation to provide more info. As we've heard here, there's a lot on the table for women's organizations and feminist organizations. You know, if we're going to be campaigning for the next SG, female SG, that's one area. We've been primarily working on CSW revitalization as part of the Pact. And we have a resolution. It was passed last Friday. And now I think it's not a done deal. So it's work that has been delineated in the resolution as broad in scope, but now we're going to be looking into the particulars. So that is one other consideration, ensuring that the success that has been announced around CSW revitalization is made into reality at the high level that is being proposed now for CSW 70. So that's one area. There's also the reforms that have been proposed by the Secretary General for UN80, which call for a merging of UN Women and UNFPA, and also the creation of a center of expertise, excellency for women, peace, and security. So there's a lot of work for us on all these fronts. And of course, it is all our work. It is this area of gender equality and doing it within a known pushback on this. So this is an area for all of us to do work. And I invite for us to discuss, what are some strategies, how we can work together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Michael, please.
I just didn't want to miss the opportunity to thank C4UN for putting together the event, and especially the panelists for sharing a lot of resources that I, as kind of one of the dinosaurs in the room, was completely unfamiliar with. So I've been looking into a lot of these, and every single one of them is absolutely exceptional. So kudos to you. Specifically, UN Foundation's work, for example, with the Pact Decoded is absolutely phenomenal. I've been on that. That's the kind of thing, we talk about intergeneration. That's the kind of stuff I'm going to be sharing with my father-in-law, who's like 70 plus, right? So it's definitely not something that's specific for use. It definitely has global value. So thanks again to C4UN and everyone here.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'll just put in a comment since I'm controlling the mic. So I'm Dhruvak. I'm the Next Generation India Fellow with the UN Foundation. I was very keen on learning a little bit more deeply on experiences from around the room, and it can be from you, it can be from Lucia Online, or from the School of International Futures on work with national and subnational, potentially local governments on anticipatory governance and long-term thinking. And the reason I say that is because we're just putting together sort of a roadmap for India for the next few decades. And one of our headline recommendations has also been to institutionalize that in some way. We're calling it a Ministry of Future Affairs. But the idea over there being if we can help institutionalize that within the government of India, for example, which can then go across departments and maybe also subnational governments to try and bring that lens more tangibly to actual policy decisions. So very keen on learning more about that.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, one last opportunity. Anyone else in the audience before we come back to the panel for final comments? So great. So I think I'm going to go to Ishan and Caroline if you have any final thoughts, and then come down here, and then Temba, I'm going to give you the last word before I wrap it up. So please.
There we go. We're working again. I just want to say that it's really nice being in a room of a little bit of optimism, because there isn't a ton of that around. And our GGI platform, I think, is really trying to contribute to that by bringing together sort of calls and demands for innovations and things we need, but actually mapping what innovations and sort of unique mechanisms are out there. The way that sort of information works is that we usually only hear about things that aren't working. When things go badly, that's newsworthy, but the things that are chugging along effectively or efficiently, we don't always hear about. So part of our job is sort of mapping out the things that do work really well to provide a resource for building new things from that. So it's a really good sort of energy to be around, and also hear about what is working in the things that you work on. So thank you.
I'll touch on a couple of the questions. The first on the institutionalization of CSO participation in the Pact implementation, and just taking on some of the good practices from the way in which the Chapter 4 working group is being implemented, and the fact that we have those 3 working groups on the Youth Fund, the Youth Investment Platform, and the core principles for meaningful youth engagement. Within each of those working groups, each UN entity has to bring along a youth representative with them to sit on that task force. Those young people then get to have a say and are shaping, how the implementation is happening. And then also when the briefings with member states on the implementation are happening, it's young people who are briefing the member states about the progress that's being done as well. So it shifts the dynamic there and socializes, the fact that actually young people can be included. And perhaps this is something that we can take, some good practice we can take across the other work streams and see how CSO participation can be integrated there. The second point, and to cause a little bit of disruption, is on the question around the next SG and sort of the Pact and how that can be taken forward. I mean, I think we can take a step back from the text of the Pact. Why was the Pact brought into place? Why was the Summer of the Future introduced? And I think it's that principle and the essence of why the Summer of the Future happened is something that I think definitely needs to be taken forward in the next, whoever leads the UN for the next 10 years or 5 to 10 years. I think that that's really about how do we rebuild trust in each other, trust between the member states, trust between us as CSOs, trust between us as young people, civil society, young people, member states. We're not a homogenous group, and I think that that's really the essence. How do we rebuild trust in the institutions that were designed to serve we the peoples? So really, I think often we get so engrossed in the language, the substance, what's there, what was missing, and we forget to take that step back. Why did we convene in the first place? Why did we have this outcome? And how on earth did we get 193 family members? I mean, I'm from an Indian background. I have a huge family, and family disagreements are, the norm. And so how did we get 193 family members to agree on something that is so beautiful, something that does capture the breadth of the UN system? And what can we take learnings from that? And how can the next SG really make sure that they're running on a campaign that really is rooted and grounded in trust?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I neglected to mention, we're going to go back to Njeri as well, please, if you have any final thoughts and responses to some of the questions.
Yes, thank you. Very brief comments from my side. I wanted to leave us on the point of reflection that the work that we're doing is very novel. Bringing in future generations into policy making at a multilateral level internationally is something new. Maybe it has been embedded in cultural practices. Maybe it's something that we are connected to at a more ethereal level. But from a logistical, operational policy focus, is very new. And the Impact Coalition for Future Generations definitely wants to work towards a space where we can have discussions around innovative practices that allow us to reach these ambitions. I want to highlight that we may not have the ready answers, but I think the important thing here is the commitment and the will to be transformative in our thinking and to be innovative in the ways in which we want to integrate these concerns. And the importance of continued dialogue, because as we engage, it will surface different priorities, it will surface different models that might be contextually relevant across different geographies, and it's an important space to occupy from a lens of openness and learning. And with that, just to say thank you very much for this space already, this dialogue here being an example of how these dialogues can contribute to furthering our understanding and building momentum around the work that we're doing. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can I maybe just jump in briefly with my own last words?
Yes, please. Sorry, Shah, I didn't see you on the screen. I thought we had lost you. Please.
All right, thank you so much. Yes, my last words, I would urge us that for the next SG, member states that have a stake at choosing whoever that will be should look for someone with the courage and the vision, someone who places humanity and the earth at the center, someone who still believes and builds multilateralism, but above all, let us use the Pact for the Future as a barometer for gauging who should become the next SG. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Giovanna, Elena, do you have any final responses, thoughts?
Yeah, very quickly on the institutionalization of civil society. I think Nodara and others in the room did a great work with the Civil Society Conference and the Impact Coalitions, but civil society's the institutionalization remains a gap. But there are proposals out there, including Citizen Assembly, a high-level champion for civil society at the UN, and we see other organizations that have a structure more inclusive of civil society with a real voice. So that's something that hopefully the next SG will give the deserved attention as well.
Elena, please.
Maybe just a final reflection on the question around how to support the vision of the next Secretary General, and I think it's a very noble attempt to do that, and whoever, especially the group working on future generations, I think they should definitely take it up and try to bring it to the table. There are movements like the 148 billion campaign, of which I'm just a supporter, that I think are a good place to start understanding the race and how that would go, and hopefully it will be as transparent and open and also to civil society as possible. And thank you for this forum. It's great.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Themba, final thoughts, words, responses. Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. A couple of thoughts on UN80. If you followed what the SG said when he was introducing or launching the UN80, he framed it in the context of the Pact. And in the different conversations that have happened on UN80 with member states, it's been very encouraging that both from our leadership in the UN as well as many member states still make reference to the Pact. Internally, we also somehow lucky because both portfolios on the Pact for the Future and UN80 fall under Secretary General Guy Ryder. So that in itself provides synergies for between these two processes. As some of you have already heard, the Pact, we are seeing it as a representation of the what needs to be done. And the UN80, we are saying it's a how. We have messaged that if the UN80 is done properly, it should put us in the best position to deliver on the mandates that have been given to us, including on the Pact for the Future. Sadly, some of the conversations, when people talk about UN80, they are only looking at budgets, budget cuts. But this exercise is bigger than the budget cuts. And let's make sure that in the context of such discussions, we are looking at strategic issues of how can the UN continue to be relevant in the next 80 years, given the context that we are in. So just to assure you that this is a discussion that we're having internally to make sure that these two processes, speak to each other. Now, on regionalization, we are working very closely with regional economic commissions. I have met some of you in our engagements at the regional level, and that is a platform that we are leveraging to advance regional implementation. Because again, in the context of resource constraints, let's try to leverage existing mechanisms. And at the regional level, they already have different mechanisms, including the annual forums on sustainable development, where we have been also, taking advantage of them to have specific convenings with many of the stakeholders that are also part of this conversation. The colleague from India, we can connect, but anything that happens at the country level, we want to bring in our resident coordinators because they are on the ground. So the first port of call is our resident coordinators and UN country teams to support in that engagement. But just to assure you that the issue of ensuring that it's institutionalized, including at the local level, is something that we're taking seriously. And we're working with UN Habitat, they work with local authorities to try to convince something specifically for local authorities, perhaps early next year or sometime next year. There's a World Urban Forum that is happening next year, and we want to try to see if we can take advantage of that. Now, as we get into the second year of implementation, with so many other priorities going on, including the selection of the SG, it's important for all of us to work as partners to keep the Pact alive. Because whoever is coming in as the SG, if she, hopefully she, doesn't sense that the Pact is still alive, they may not prioritize it. So it's up to all of us to continue to work together to amplify the Pact. And again, from our side, we'll do our best, but we are relying on the strong partnerships that we enjoy with all of you to continue to pushing on. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We've come to the end, so I'll just close up really quickly to just say thank you to the UN Foundation, our partners. Thank you to Elizabeth earlier. Thank you all for coming, for sticking with us through this week and this morning. You've got on the back screen, you can see our list of partners that have engaged with us on this. It's so important to keep this energy up, to keep the Pact alive. And I think just final word is that it is about the issues. It's about making a difference in people's lives. And one of the things that I take away from this and all this conversation is there is a lot of that happening on the ground at the regional level, at the national level. And that gives me optimism to move this forward on this larger conversation of what is it that what is the UN that we need and how we're going to bring it forward. And I think the Pact for the Future provides us that foundation. So let's keep it going. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.